The ship has no name to the ice, but to you she has always been the Gray Sister. She doesn't creak as much as she breathes, exhaling slow, pained moans when the beams flex against the cold, and inhaling as the frost tightens its grip, dragging her deeper into herself. You've watched her for years, long enough to know when she's groaning from age, and when she's groaning from something else, something watching back. The wind no longer cuts in sharp gusts, but moves like fabric through frozen teeth. It brings with it not salt, not storm, but silence. And that silence has a shape. The crew jokes about it sometimes, laughing hollowly into their mugs when the stars vanish too fast, or when the compass needle spins like a coin tossed by unseen hands. But no one mentions the other thing. The fact that one ship didn't arrive at the northern hunting camp last season, that a second one sent word from the fjord, and then stopped. Now it's your turn, or rather the Gray Sisters. She was never meant for speed. She is thick-hulled, double-layered with spruce and iron-reinforced ribs. A whaling ship, yes, but old. Not the kind of vessel a young man dreams of when he first climbs a mast with sun-warmed rope beneath his fingers. This is the ship for the weary, for men like you. Ones who no longer run, ones who watch. The crew numbers 34, though you've only counted 33 this morning. There's always one missing at first light, either still sleeping or hiding behind a barrel avoiding work. But this time, the absence clings longer. Nobody says a word. Just another morning on the icebound sea. You suspect even the ship notices. The creaks are different. They feel more like questions. You stand near the prow, where the salt wind has already rusted 2 of the 3 lantern hooks. One hangs limp and empty. The other flickers a flame that refuses to go out despite the gale. And the third, well, no one lights the third anymore. The last time someone did it blew out with a scream that wasn't the wind. It is your 6th journey north, possibly your 7th. You've stopped keeping count ever since your brother-in-law went under on the 4th. That year, a fin whale surfaced and exhaled into the crow's silence, and he leaned too far over the railing with a harpoon half-slung, not even tethered. Gone, just gone, and still you returned. Why? Because some men dig graves, others hold lanterns. You keep watch. And what a strange sea to watch now. The weather this far north has no pattern. Days might stretch with sun that turns snow to steam, and nights snap back with a moon that turns steam to knives. Last evening you stood on deck as the wind turned glassy and a fog poured in, not rolled, not settled, but poured as if spilled from a chalice held by a hand above the stars. The bell from the trailing ship. The Candlemoth stopped ringing midway through its 2nd hour. Not even an echo. Just nothing. You leaned over with your spyglass breath fogging the lens and watched as the lights aboard her began to dim one by one. First the stern lamp, then the quarterdeck torch, then the faint shimmer of her cabin glow as if someone snuffed a candle behind frosted glass. Finally, her bow lamp blinked once-twice and vanished as though she'd simply rolled backwards into the fog and ceased to be. No shout, no splash, no crash of ice, no fire, no smoke, not even the sound of rigging snapping under strain. It was as if the sea had breathed in and taken her whole like a child swallowing a cherry pit. The men murmured that night, passing small wooden charms between their fingers, scraps of St. Brendan tokens of whale teeth, carved with runes they pretended not to understand. One man claimed he saw someone walking on the surface between the ships barefoot and carrying a lamp. Another said the lamp wasn't carried, it floated, and the figure beneath it had no face. You've learned to let the stories pass, but even you felt it, that odd sensation that the sea no longer moved beneath the ship, but above it, somehow pressing downward like a slow breath held too long. This morning you climb the watch ladder and emerge into the brittle dawn where the sky glows pale orange behind gray veils, the color of candle wax spilled in snow. The ice fields ahead no longer form in jagged veins or shattered sheets. They pulse in strange circular blooms round and unnatural like crop rings, like seals pressed with unseen sigils. The ship slows. Not from orders, no one issued them, but from agreement. The crew hesitates. The sails are trimmed not from command, but caution. You peer out again and spot something that stops your breath. A dark circle carved perfectly into the ice ahead, smooth-edged, no cracks, no splinters, no raised rim from a fallen block, just a circular void. Its edge is clean enough to shave with. The captain emerges beside you without a word. He sees it too. No one speaks. The helmsman shifts uncomfortably, but the wheel does not move. And just beyond the hole in the field of frost that should be untouched, you see them footprints, tiny, human, leading away. You squint. Not boot prints. Bare feet. 5 toes narrow, heel pressed, each step deliberate and evenly spaced, as if made by someone with neither fear nor hurry. As if made by someone used to walking on ice. As if the cold did not bother them. As if they had been born to it. The prints lead toward your ship and vanish just beneath the bow. The captain says nothing. He taps the lookout bell 3 times and descends again, one hand clenched on the rail. That's not the signal for a found whale. It's not even the signal for danger. It's a signal rarely used. You think back maybe twice before once, when someone saw a light in the water beneath the hull. Once when the priest the company brought aboard refused to enter the galley. Below deck, the muttering begins. You hear the cook sharpening a knife rhythmically, not for food, but to keep his hands from shaking. And above deck, you lean out over the bow once more. You can no longer see the footprints. You squint into the hole itself. It is black, not ocean black, not storm black. Black like polished obsidian, like something closed a lid over the world and forgot to open it again. Your breath forms small clouds, but you notice down in the hollow you see no steam, no frost, nothing. No movement, no texture. Just a perfect absence. You touch the rim with a long oar, but the wood makes no splash, no sound. It merely disappears, and when you draw it back, the portion dipped in is smooth wet and smells of camphor and mint. Your heart begins to race, not with fear, but a kind of awe, reverence even. The sea should never do this. It knows how to crack, to churn, to freeze and fracture. But this is precision. This is decision. Someone, something made this. You look up and realize the clouds are beginning to form a spiral. Not fast, not storm speed, but slow, deliberate, as if mimicking the hole below. A perfect circle above, a perfect circle below. You are standing on the line that connects them. You feel no immediate fear. You're old, older than most on board. You've seen worse things, men crushed by barrels, hands caught in winches, children drown in shallow harbors. And yet, this is different. Not cruel, just not human. A sailor nearby begins humming tunelessly. He doesn't realize he's doing it. The bosun smacks him to stop, and the sound breaks like glass across the deck. Everyone flinches, and then from below, from the black eye of the sea, comes a single sound. Not a growl, not a whisper, not the gurgle of bubbles or the slap of water. It's a note, a low vibrating tone so soft it brushes rather than strikes your ears, like the hum of glass under a wet finger. It lasts 4 seconds, long enough for everyone to freeze, and then it stops. The ice groans, not all of it, just the ring, just the edge, and then nothing again. Just you, the Gray Sister, and the memory of a sound that was never meant for human ears. You blink, and the footprint trail is gone. You wake to the sound of wood groaning beneath your boots, Not the usual creak, no familiar timber song that calls out with morning frost, and the shifting pressure of the hull against ice. No, this sound is more subtle, more conscious, as though the deck is trying to exhale without waking the rest of the ship. You've come to understand these small differences. In the decades you've served aboard vessels like this, thick-ribbed, soot-scented mended more times than remembered you've learned how to listen. It is still early yet. A pale glow seeps through the fog, not bright enough to show the color of things, but just enough to distinguish their shapes. You move across the deck with the quiet rhythm of habit. Your joints complain with the morning cold, your knees especially, ever since you slipped on that patch of blood-wet deck 2 years ago. Not yours, of course. A boy lost 3 fingers to a winch gear. You bandaged what was left and lit a candle for the rest. A ship is its own monastery. In a way, everyone has their rituals. Some men sharpen hooks each morning, as though preparing for a duel. Others whisper to the sea before taking their first sip of water. Your ritual is silence. A silence that listens, and today it listens back. The sea is unusually still. That alone is troubling. Ice always shifts. Even when the wind dies, there should be cracking the shrill stutter of pressure ridges, forming the sound of water groaning under its own skin. But today, nothing. As though the ocean beneath has turned to breathless glass. Even the sails, drawn half to rest, hang without tension. Not sagging. Just waiting. You climb to the watch again, not because it's your shift, but because something in your ribs tells you to. Not pain, exactly more like a pressure, the way weather speaks to old wounds. A storm might announce itself in your ankle, a frost in your knuckles. But this thrum in your chest isn't forecasting weather. It's more like someone knocking at a door from inside your spine. Up here, the air is clearer. You scan the ice again, the circle remains. Not larger, not smaller. Still perfect. No ripples around its edge, no signs of widening. Just that same void of black, smoother than ink, stiller than night. You check the ice nearby. No new footprints, no marks at all. As though the ice has reset itself in the night, smoothing over all disturbance. Only the circle remains. Like an eye refusing to blink, you turn your gaze outward to the horizon. A second ship had been trailing behind you before the fog. You strain your eyes. Nothing. No mast, no flutter of a sail, no glint from a spyglass, no banner snapping in warning. Just cold air and infinite white. You make a mental note to ask the captain about her. He'll likely give you that same half scowl he always does when silence answers too many questions. Back below, the crew begins to stir. The cook clatters tin pots with unnecessary force, not to cook, but to make noise because silence unnerves him. You hear boots stomping overhead, men exhaling loudly, as if trying to claim space with breath. Their movements are exaggerated, each gesture too quick, too loud. They are afraid, the young ones especially. And then comes the bell. 3 slow tolls. You rang them yesterday, but now the boatswain rings them again. Not for whales, not for ice shifts, not for any tangible danger. It's the bell you use when something demands attention, but can't be named. Men gather. The captain does not speak. He does not need to. They all feel it. The silence in the ship is growing too loud. You're the first to break from the gathering. You return to the prow where your post remains. You lean over once again, staring not at the hole now, but at the curve of the sea beyond it. And that's when you hear it again. The sound, not a word, not a whistle, a note, low, vibrating. But this time it's not from below. It's behind you. You turn. Nothing there. You turn again. And then you see it etched into the frost on the railing, a small set of handprints. child-sized, perfectly symmetrical, as if someone had leaned forward, fingers spread, and rested their palms just there. But no one small enough is aboard. Not anymore. You kneel. The prints are too fine to be gloves. Skin. You touch them. They're warm. The print fades beneath your finger, not in heat, but in texture. The frost resettles like breath wiped from glass. You rise slowly. Something is wrong with the light now. It is not that it has dimmed, but that shadows now fall in the wrong direction. You test this by extending your arm. Light strikes the palm from starboard, but the sun should be to port. You close your eyes, counting backward from 10. A silly trick one of the mates taught you years ago to still your nerves. You reopen them. Now the shadows are normal. Were they ever wrong? Or were your eyes playing tricks? You do not like the answer your heart gives. You descend slowly, finding the captain near the forecastle. He has opened the oil log usually reserved for ration checks, and inside he has begun to draw. Circles. Circles within circles. One large, one slightly smaller, one broken. He does not look up when you arrive. He merely says, "Another bell tonight." You ask why. He says nothing, but you both know. The Gray Sister isn't alone in this ocean anymore, not in the ordinary sense of being trailed or followed, but in the deeper way something has chosen to notice her. You eat nothing at the midday meal. The food tastes off, not spoiled, but flat, like it has forgotten how to nourish. The cook doesn't argue. He merely shrugs and says, "The salt don't bite like it used to." You return again to the crow's nest before dusk. This time the wind brings with it a song. Not a melody exactly, but a rise and fall of tones. Like whale song, but higher. Human-like. Almost gentle. And that's when you remember. Long ago in your third voyage north, a woman from Iceland had spoken of Huldufolk, hidden folk. She'd told you that they did not live beneath the mountains, but beneath the sea. That their eyes were fish-like, but their ears were like bells. That they came up only when something from below wished to be seen. She'd gone missing a week later, and the ship she was on had circled the same region. You lean harder against the railing eyes, squinting toward the dying light, and then you see it, a lantern, floating, far across the ice where no man could walk, no rope could reach, a faint greenish flame dancing unnaturally above the surface, and beneath it a figure, barely visible, pale, still, watching. You blink, it's gone. You grip the railing tighter. The wind howls then, but not like a gale, more like a voice, whispering, not words, but a direction, north, always north. You return below once more. This time you place a hand on the deck as you pass. It feels warm, too warm. You kneel, press your ear to the planks, and beneath the sound again, low, humming. But this time it isn't just a note, it's breathing. The ship is breathing, not groaning, not creaking, breathing, and your breath matches it. In, out, you rise. It's dark now, but no stars. Only the circle of ice remains lit. Lit from within, like a pupil catching moonlight. And deep within your chest, something ancient stirs. The part of you that never forgot what it was to fear the ocean, not for its storms, but for its silences. You return to your post, and you wait. You do not recall falling asleep. In fact, you are certain you didn't. You remember standing at your post, hand on the railing, listening to the breathing rhythm of the ship beneath your boots. Yet now here you are, eyes opening to a sky no longer made of cloud or stars, but instead smeared with a faint green haze like moss light through old glass. The kind of light that does not illuminate, but stains everything it touches. Your breath fogs, but only faintly. The air is warmer than it should be considering the latitude. This far north, the mornings should crack skin and snap rope, yet the deck feels pliant, almost damp. You press your fingers to the rail again. It is slick, not with dew, with something oilier. You raise your hand and sniff. There it is again, that unmistakable scent of camphor and crushed mint. The smell of what touched the oar the day before. The smell of the circular hole. You turn, expecting to see the first watch relieving you, but the deck is empty. Not quiet empty. Even the sounds of boots and shouts from below deck are absent. The air lacks voice, as if the entire ship has taken in a breath and not let it go. You descend the ladder slowly, your joints reluctant, but not from age, from caution. The wood feels off, almost too smooth, like polished coral. When your boots hit the main deck, your eyes fall on the oil lamps. Still burning, yes, but the flames have changed. No longer orange, not even blue. Green. A sickly, wavering green that sways not with wind, but rhythm, pulsing gently in sync with something unseen. You pass by the midship lanterns. The brass casings are covered in condensation, not water, but a thin film like a snail's trail over polished copper. You wipe your sleeve against one, and your arm tingles where it touches. Below deck, the hammocks swing, but not in time with the ship's motion. You've lived enough years on the sea to know the rhythm of waves, of swell and pitch. These hammocks do not respond to the ocean's breath. They sway gently in opposition to it, as if lulled by a different sea entirely. You speak softly, just a name, the name of the cook, usually up before all others, but the sound falls flat. No echo, no reply. You turn and see it, a trail of footprints, wet, bare, leading from the galley door through the corridor, vanishing into the darkness of the storage hold. You follow. Each step you take, the scent deepens. Camphor again, now tinged with salt, and something else, like ozone before lightning. Your boots do not echo on the wood. Even your own footsteps sound muted. At the entrance to the hold, you pause. The door is open, but the air beyond it feels thick, heavier. The way air feels before confession or disaster. You duck low, descending the short steps into the hold, and the smell overwhelms you. It is not death, not mold or rot, but memory. The air smells like something you forgot in childhood, like the smell of sea-wet wool in your mother's arms, like ink on a page that was never written, like a lullaby sung once and then lost forever. The light here is green, even though there are no lamps lit. It glows from the boards, from the barrels, from the salt-caked walls. The footprints stop at the far end, where the ballast stones lie unmoved since departure. You approach them slowly, and then movement, not from the stones, but from the shadows they cast. One of the stones shifts, not rolls, not falls, shifts, as though something beneath it had exhaled. You kneel. There between two stones something glimmers, not gold, not water, an eye, just one. Wide, unblinking, pale as bone. Watching you, you stagger backward, heart in your throat, but no sound escapes, and the eye closes. Not quickly, not with a blink. It closes like a curtain drawn slowly over the mind. You rise too fast, hitting your shoulder against the overhead beam. Pain flashes, and for the first time in days, it feels real. You clutch your side breath, uneven. When you glance back, the eye is gone. The green glow dims. You return above deck in a daze, unsure whether you dreamt it or remembered it. But the prints are still there, and now others have gathered. The captain, two deckhands, the boatswain. They do not speak, just stare. One of them points not at the hole in the ice, but at the ice itself. There, etched across a new sheet, are more prints. These are not feet, they are hands. Hands dragging something heavy, something wide, something that left no body, no bones, no blood. Only drag marks, like a net pulled across fresh snow. The captain says only prepare the boat. The men obey, no questions. The small boat is lowered onto the ice. You go with them not because you are told, but because it is understood. You are the oldest. You are the watcher. And now you must walk. The crunch of your boots on the ice is too crisp, the cold too exact. As if the air is listening, you approach the hole again. It has changed, not in size, but now it reflects, not the sky, but faces. You see your own, yes, but younger. Eyes unwrinkled, mouth unsure, hands unscarred. You look again. Now the face is not yours, but someone you once knew, a boy, lost at sea 3 decades ago. You never told anyone, but you held his hand when he slipped. You let go, not out of cruelty, out of necessity. You told yourself it was the right choice. The sea shows you his face now, smiling. You turn away, bile rising in your throat. The captain steps forward, holding a harpoon, not to throw, but to offer. He places it at the edge of the circle blade down. It vanishes. No splash, just gone. The surface ripples once, and then stills. The captain nods as though a bargain has been struck. The men return to the ship. You remain. You kneel. You whisper. To nothing. To everything. To the cold. And the cold whispers back. Only one word. Your name. Not shouted. Not sung. Spoken. And you understand. This is no mere hole. This is a door. Not opened by force, but by memory. Not sealed by ice, but by silence. And now it has opened for you. You return to the ship, your boots leaving no prints. The deck is alive again. Voices. Movement. As if the ship had held its breath, and now exhales. The green light fades from the lamps. The hammocks now sway with the proper rhythm. The fog begins to lift. But, this is not peace. This is permission. And the sea is watching. You will keep your post again tonight. And when the time comes, you will descend. Not with rope, not with oars, but with eyes open, because you are the watchman. And now, the watcher watches back. By the time the sky bleeds into a bruised purple and the ice groans with the weariness of ancient weight, you're already back in the crow's nest watching. You've never felt more awake, not even in your younger years, when the cold was a thrill, and the height of the rigging made your heart drum like a war call. But this alertness is different. It isn't sharp. It isn't energized. It's heavy, like something coiled within you has opened one eye and refuses to shut it again. The day passes strangely. Time slips in loops. A crewman passes you twice within the same minute. The sun rises no higher after hours of waiting. You mark your log, then blink, and the ink is dry, but the hour hasn't changed. The sails shiver against wind that doesn't exist. You bite your tongue, not out of madness, but out of instinct, to remind yourself that you're still flesh, still bound to the rules of gravity and blood. And yet, as the ship moves northward, the very texture of the world begins to ripple. Below, the men perform their duties with a kind of quiet dread. No one says it aloud, but they've seen the changes too. The buckets won't fill with clean water anymore. The ropes, normally rough with brine and salt, feel warm to the touch, almost slick like eel skin. One of the lads tied a coil wrong this morning, and the rope pulled itself into a perfect knot as he turned away. He laughed at first, but then he untied it, looked away again, and found it knotted tighter. He doesn't speak now. He sits below deck, eyes fixed on his hands, as if afraid they no longer belong to him. The captain, always a man of few words, has become utterly silent. You've seen him pacing, not the quarterdeck as he once did, but the foredeck, where the smell of mint still lingers from the vanished harpoon. He carries a bit of parchment in his pocket and touches it when he thinks no one sees. You know what it is. A piece of an old map, one that marks no coastlines, no ports, no compass rose, just a series of circles, one within the other, drawn in rust-colored ink and passed down from a harpooner who went blind and mad 2 decades ago. You remember? You were there, and now you understand. The captain isn't steering the ship anymore, not in the way he used to. He's following. He doesn't steer north because the wind favors it. He steers north because something expects him to. And it's not just him. You feel it too. A pull not physical, but deeper. A direction whispered not in words, but in the soft hum at the edge of hearing. a vibration that sits behind your ears and your teeth, in the spaces where your memories wait like embers. By midday, another change comes. The ice stops moving. It doesn't crack. It doesn't drift. It doesn't even freeze further. It simply holds, as if the sea beneath has stilled completely, as if the entire world has gone breathless. And then the ship itself begins to slow, not because the crew lets the sails fall slack, not because the tiller is pulled, but because the very waters beneath you thicken. The ocean feels not like water anymore, but like syrup, like something dense and ancient is resisting your forward motion. The hull moans in protest, not from pressure or wind, but from memory, as though some ancient part of the wood remembers where you are and doesn't want to return. You descend from the crow's nest slower than usual, hand clutching the rail for reasons other than balance. The sky is still too still. The clouds haven't shifted since dawn. They sit like old canvas pinned to the sky. And the birds which should have returned by now, gulls, petrels, even crows, are entirely absent. The only winged shape you've seen today was not a bird at all, but a pale streak that glided once across the sun, pausing for a second, then vanishing with a whisper that left your skin cold for hours. On the main deck, men gather by the bow again. The hole, the circular void in the ice, is still there, though now it seems to pulse ever so gently, as if breathing, as if alive. What's more, it no longer reflects only your face or the memories of your past. Now it shows scenes, flickering, just for a second. A burning forest, a harpoon stuck in a living tree, a hand yours scratching symbols into a bone. Each image gone before you can be sure it was real. But the taste it leaves in your mouth, the sensation, the memory, those remain. One of the crew speaks, a boy named Eric, barely 17. He says he heard a song last night. No one laughs. He says it wasn't like anything he's ever known. Not words. Just vowels stretched long, shimmering like silver threads through the hull. He says it came from below, from the ice. The harpooner, Oscar, is listening. His eyes are wild now. He hasn't slept in 2 nights. Not since he threw that rusted bar of iron overboard in silence, muttering that no metal should face what's coming. You remember that moment. You remember the sound the iron made when it vanished beneath the surface, not a splash, but a chime. He steps forward now, laying his harpoon at your feet. He says he's done, that the sea has chosen someone else. You ask who. He points to you. The crew doesn't argue. That night, you take the midwatch. Not because you're ordered to, because no one else will. You walk the length of the deck 5 times. The sails are trimmed, though there's no wind. The helm is fixed, though the rudder no longer seems to bite the sea. You glance up at the stars, and that's when you notice they're wrong. Not missing, just rearranged. You don't know every constellation, but you know the major ones. You were born under the hunter. You've seen it in 100 skies. But tonight he is gone. In his place, a new pattern, 5 stars arranged in a spiral, faint but deliberate. As if someone rearranged the heavens while no one was looking. You grip the rail, and once again that same scent rises, camphor salt memory, and then the singing begins. This time it is real, not in your mind, not in memory, not in sleep. It rises from beneath the deck, from the hold, from the stones, and it is not human. It's slow at first. One note, then another. A harmony forms, echoing with impossible depth. It vibrates the timbers, causes the lanterns to sway. In time sends ripples across the tar-sealed barrels. You move toward the sound, though each step feels heavier, as though the ship resists you, as though the very boards try to hold you in place. But you descend. The song grows louder. You reach the bottom of the stairs. The green light is back. This time it pulses in rhythm with the song, And the ballast stones, those immovable blocks of weight and balance, are gone. In their place is water, dark, still, open. A hole within the ship, a mirror of the one in the ice above. You step closer. The water does not ripple. It glows faintly. And beneath it, shapes move. You see hands, not reaching, not threatening, just floating, pale, long-fingered, gentle. They move in circles, weaving motions like dancers in ritual. One of them lifts, points, to you. The song swells, not louder but deeper. It strikes a chord in your bones. You feel your knees weaken, not from fear but from recognition. You've heard this song before, not in this life, but in another. A fragment of memory surfaces young, fevered, snowbound. A woman singing as she brushed the hair from your forehead. A lullaby with no words. A hum that settled into your bones and stayed there. This is the same. The hand beckons. You do not move, and the water closes. No splash, just stillness. You stagger back, breath caught, heart thudding, and the song fades. The light dies. The ballast is back. No hole, no hands. But in your palm, you are holding something you didn't have before. A scale. Thin, translucent, iridescent, still warm. You close your hand. No one will believe you. But it doesn't matter, because now the sea has touched you, and you are part of it forever. By morning, the world has changed in ways that only the old, the quiet, and the watchful can notice. You are all three. So it is no surprise that you are the first to feel it, not in sight or sound, but in something more primal, more submerged, like a shift in current, beneath the surface of still water. At first, it is just a sensation, a vague pulling at the space between your shoulders, as though your spine had become a compass needle, trembling toward something unmarked on any chart. The rest of the crew wakes slowly, as though caught in the lingering hold of a collective dream. No one speaks above a whisper. The cook forgets to stoke the fire for morning broth. The carpenter walks the length of the deck 3 times before realizing he's still carrying a hammer from yesterday. Even the rats, usually bold in their twilight scurrying, have vanished completely. It's not the kind of fear that causes panic. This is something deeper. It's reverence, dressed as dread. As if the ship itself has passed through a veil in the night and entered sacred waters where no name should be spoken, no loud step should be made. You walk the length of the upper deck and stop when you reach the mainmast. There, hanging from one of the ropes that should be knotted tight, is something new, a charm. It dangles at eye level, swaying gently without breeze. It's made of bone, whale rib by the looks of it, carved into a spiral so delicate that light seems to pass through its thinner ends. You don't touch it. You know better. Instead, you observe its placement tied not by accident, not with clumsy fingers in the dark, but with precision. Someone wanted it seen. Someone or something. By mid-morning, the ice fields grow strange. No longer jagged and broken, no longer the chaotic terrain of shifting pressure and violent fracture. Now they flow in patterns, lines, arcs, curves drawn with a steady hand. When viewed from above, you realize they form a spiral, vast and slow-moving, impossible to see from deck level, but clear when viewed from the crow's nest. You climb again, and sure enough, there it is. A spiral wide enough to encircle a fleet, its curve gentle but exact. It isn't natural. Nature doesn't compose herself with such symmetry. This is intention. This is message. The captain joins you. Moments later, his eyes bleary from too little sleep. He doesn't speak. He simply gazes out at the spiral for a long time. And when he does speak, his voice is softer than you've ever heard it. It's marking something he says, or warning us away. You ask him which he thinks it is. He doesn't answer. Instead, he hands you the map again, the one with the rust-colored rings. You've seen it more times than you can count, but today, something new has been added. At the center of the circles, in a space that was once blank, is now drawn an eye. Not stylized, not symbolic. Detailed. Human, yes, but not entirely. Too large. The iris too pale. The pupil too deep. And inked beneath it just 2 words, "She waits." You hand the map back. You don't ask who drew the eye. You suspect it wasn't the captain. Not with ink, at least. That afternoon the wind returns, but it comes from below. The sails don't billow. They suck inward as though the ship were being drawn down into the sea's lungs. The air carries no salt, only cold. Not the cold of weather, but the cold of vast sunless places. Caverns where light has never lived. Trenches that no line has ever sounded. The crew reacts poorly. One man begins to sing, but the melody is unfamiliar. His voice cracks on each high note, yet he keeps going, eyes rolled slightly upward, as though listening for something none of you can hear. Another begins to hum in harmony. Then another. Within minutes, nearly half the men are participating in this strange, wordless chorus. You don't join. You watch. Their faces are calm, too. Calm. Their expressions slack with bliss. They sway slightly in time with the hum, and some have closed their eyes entirely. The captain does nothing. You descend to the hold, not because you believe there's safety below, but because something tells you the answers no longer lie in the sky. The ballast stones are once again undisturbed. The wooden crates and tarred barrels remain in neat rows. But in the far corner behind the spare sails and the salted meats, you find something new. A patch of frost that isn't cold. You kneel beside it, pressing your palm to its surface. Instead of ice, it feels soft, like skin beneath a veil of snow. As you withdraw your hand, frost clings to your skin for a moment longer than it should, reluctant to let go, as though it recognized you. You return to your feet and notice something scratched into the wall just above the frost patch. It's faint, carved with a nail or small blade, the lines shallow but deliberate. You trace them with your fingers and recognize them for what they are. A fragment of script from a language you don't know but feel you've seen before. Not on any chart, not in any ledger. You remember it from a dream, from a fever, from a story told on a stormy night to pass the time. The letters seem to shimmer when you look away, then return to stillness when faced directly. You whisper their shape. The frost pulses, then stillness returns. You back away slowly. The ship has begun to list, not from wind or tide, but from intention. A slow lean to starboard, as though drawn by gravity toward something below. On deck, the singing has stopped. The men look different now, not altered in body, but in presence. They seem lighter, more transparent at the edges, as if only partially here. One man passes you, and for a moment, you see the deck through his shoulder. You blink, and he's whole again. But you saw it. You know what you saw. That evening, you hold the night watch again. You insist upon it. No one objects. You stand at the bow, staring down at the ice, which now glows faintly in hues you can't name. The hole remains always in sight, never closing. But now, others have formed. Smaller, fainter. As if the first was a mouth and these are the teeth. At midnight, the song returns. But this time, it isn't from below. It comes from the rigging. You look up. She is there. A woman, or what once was. Pale, hair long and wet, eyes like pearls with centers of ink. She stands with bare feet wrapped around the crossbeam arms at her sides, unmoving. She doesn't speak. She opens her mouth, and the sound pours forth not words, not melody, but memory itself rendered in tone. You are 6 years old again, watching your father carve wood by candlelight. You are 17, bleeding on the sand after a fight gone wrong. You are 24, whispering goodbye to someone you never dared love. Each sound she sings is a door, and you are walking through each one. You do not fall. You float. Time slows. Your body is weightless. When the song ends, she is gone. The ship is silent. You are kneeling. In your hand is another scale. This one is darker. When you press it to your lips, it tastes like a storm. You rise. You do not speak. You return to the crow's nest. You begin to write, not in ink, in frost, and the letters are the same as those you found in the hold. You are no longer the watchman. You are the recorder. You are the witness, and she is waiting, always waiting, beneath the ice, beneath the soul, beneath what you thought was the sea. You have long since accepted that the world is not as it was taught to you, that the lines dividing reality from dream sanity from madness are far more fragile than any sailor's rope or mapmaker's ink. But what you are beginning to understand now here upon the creaking bones of the Gray Sister, surrounded by an ocean that refuses to be simply ocean, is that the sea is not a place. It is a memory, a shared dream, a forgotten covenant made between those who walk above and those who sleep below, signed not with words, but with silence. The morning brings no sunrise, only a thick pall of copper-colored light that hangs like smoke across the horizon. It doesn't move, doesn't shift or burn off, but settles like a heavy cloth over everything: the sails, the ice, your skin. You touch your own cheek and find that the texture is subtly altered, not roughened by wind or cracked by salt, but softened, blurred at the edges, as if your body were beginning to forget its own solidity. When you flex your fingers, they feel lighter than they should, and the bones click with a sound you've never heard before, like glass meeting wet silk. Below, the crew stirs with uneasy stillness. Some move about the ship as if in a trance, not out of fatigue or laziness, but as though their movements are being puppeted by unseen currents. One man, Pétour, the youngest of the harpoon team, stands at the rail for over an hour without blinking. You time him. You watch the frost form along his lashes. You see a single tear, one of salt, not sorrow, slip down his cheek, and yet he does not move. When he finally turns to face you, his eyes are wide, clouded, not with fear, but revelation. She knows he whispers and walks below without another word. The cook no longer cooks. He now spends his days polishing the same pan over and over his fingers, moving in tiny circular motions that mirror the strange patterns appearing in the frost on the inner deck walls. Those patterns, you note, are growing. Once they were no more than a few centimeters across, simple spirals or nested circles. But now some stretch the full length of the mess hall table, and they do not repeat. Everyone is different. Everyone is deliberate. When you ask the carpenter Hari what he thinks of the frost, he doesn't answer directly. Instead, he shows you his hands. They're bandaged, but beneath the cloth, you see the red marks, each fingertip burned in a perfect circle, as though he touched something impossibly hot or impossibly cold. She doesn't like iron, he says softly, and for the first time in your life, you do not scoff at superstition. You spend that afternoon reviewing the ship's charts and logs, not because you believe they'll help, but because you need to orient yourself geographically, mentally, spiritually. The charts are as they've always been inked with the careful hands of those who have never seen what you now see. They name coastlines, estimate depths, mark currents, as if the sea were something that could be measured, known, claimed. But you've passed beyond those borders. You are now in a space that does not belong to time or empire. You are in the folds between understandings. When you flip through the ship's logbook, something strange catches your eye. The pages, normally dry and brittle, are damp, not wet, damp, as though they had been handled with sea-washed hands, page after page. The ink has run slightly on several entries. Names have blurred. Dates no longer line up. One entry marked clearly with today's date reads, "Do not go below." The water listens. You did not write it, nor did the captain, but the handwriting is unmistakably yours. You bring the book to the captain. He reads it. He nods, says nothing, just turns the page and keeps reading. When you glance back over his shoulder, the entry is gone. By late afternoon, the fog has returned, but not as a shroud. This time it moves with purpose, forming long columns that stretch down from the sky like fingers. They do not drift or swirl, but remain perfectly vertical, unmoving like pillars in a cathedral. As the ship glides forward slowly, far more slowly than any of the men are willing to admit, the masts of the Gray Sister align with those columns, and the ship itself seems to hum in resonance, as if passing through invisible gates. The sea beneath changes color, no longer black or gray or even blue. It becomes iridescent, like the inside of a shell shimmering with hidden hues that shift with each wave. You drop a weighted line to measure depth. There is no bottom, not even the usual tension that comes when line meets pressure. The weight falls endlessly until the rope snaps with a sound like thunder muffled in snow. You begin to suspect the ocean is no longer beneath you. It is above you, all around you, and the ship is simply moving through its dream. That evening, something appears on the horizon. Not a ship, not land, a structure, dark against the fading light. It rises from the ice, or perhaps from the water, or perhaps from neither. You can't tell. It appears to be a spire, tall, narrow, impossible in proportion. It leans slightly to one side, as though it grew out of the sea like a twisted tree. It reflects no light. It casts no shadow. But you know it is watching. The captain orders no course change. None is possible. The ship is not steering anymore. It is being drawn. As you approach the spire, you feel the temperature drop, not around you, but within you. Your blood slows. Your breath becomes visible even inside your lungs. Your teeth ache. Not from cold, but from resonance, as though some sound too low to hear is vibrating through your bones. When you reach the spire, the crew stands silently on deck, not by command, by instinct. The spire is made of ice, but not any ice you know. It is clear, yes, but also alive with motion, filled with threads of light that coil and twist within, like serpents trapped in glass. You think absurdly of veins. At the base of the spire is an opening, no more than a few feet high, inside darkness, and the sound of breathing. The same breath you've heard in your dreams, the same rhythm the ship began to echo. You do not ask for volunteers. You step forward. The crew says nothing. They know. You enter the spire alone. The air inside is warmer than outside, but thick heavy with the scent you've come to know too well. Mint camphor, old salt, and something else memory. The walls pulse faintly with light. As you move deeper, the space widens. The passage leads down, spiraling, always spiraling. You lose track of time. You do not know how long you walk, but eventually you reach a chamber, and there she is. Not a woman, not a god, something older. She floats in the center of the chamber, suspended in water that does not ripple, surrounded by chains that do not bind. Her eyes are closed, but you know she sees you. Her hair drifts like seaweed. Her skin glows faintly with bioluminescence. She sings, but not aloud. She sings inside your head, and you remember everything. The day you boarded your first ship, the storm that took your brother, the girl you left at the quay, the lie you told to save your captain, the boy you let drown because you froze. All of it, every secret, every shame. She does not judge. She simply gathers, and then she opens her eyes. They are not cruel. They are not kind. They are the ocean, and you understand. You were never meant to return, not in body, not in mind. You were meant to remember, to carry her song, to whisper it to others, to keep the watch. She reaches toward you not with a hand, but with a thought, and you accept. When you awaken, you are back aboard the Gray Sister. The crew stands around you. None speak, but they know you are different now, and the spire is gone, as though it had never been. The sea is calm, but you are not, for now you hear her always, in the creak of wood, in the sigh of wind, in the breath of your own lungs. She is watching, and you are her watcher, forever. Even before your eyes fully open, before the ship's sounds rise to meet the stirrings of dawn, Before your limbs remember they are flesh and not vapor, drifting through someone else's dream, you know you have changed. Not in the way sailors change after long voyages, the sunburned skin, the salt-dried hair, the limping gait that speaks of rope burns and old bruises, but in a way that reaches beneath your ribs, coils through your breath, and settles somewhere deep behind your eyes. It is as though part of you now walks elsewhere below, perhaps, or between, on a floor not made of wood or ice, but memory layered in echo and light. The deck greets you with silence, though not the dead hollow silence of fear or absence. This is something more reverent, almost liturgical. Every man aboard moves with a slowness that does not stem from fatigue, but from awareness, as if they too feel they are now treading on sacred ground or sacred water. The difference seems to have dissolved. There are fewer words exchanged now, fewer commands, fewer grunts of labor or shouts of warning. Even the wind has begun to blow differently. Gentler, yes, but not weak. It is the wind that carries a hymn, not a storm, brushing the rigging like fingers through hair. You make your rounds, nodding at the faces that still retain their names. Some do not. You recognize them physically, the way they move, the pattern of their beards, the slight limp in an old injury, but their eyes no longer carry the shape of recognition. It's not madness, it's migration. Their minds, you sense, have stepped elsewhere, perhaps standing now at the threshold of a memory, not their own. You do not question it. You of all people understand that there are journeys a man must take with his body and others that require him to leave it behind. The captain no longer emerges from his cabin in the usual manner. Once he was a figure of direction, decisive, visible, hard as iron and frost. Now he moves like a man obeying instructions passed to him in dreams. He consults no charts. He touches no compass. He simply places a hand on the rail, closes his eyes, and waits. And each time he does so, the ship shifts course subtly as though guided by currents, neither tidal nor known to stars. At midday, the fog returns not as mist or wall or blanket, but as architecture. It rises from the sea in shapes too precise to be coincidence. Colonnades, archways, spirals that twist upward and dissolve into nothing. Some among the crew begin to call it the City of Vapors, and though none know its name, all accept it as a destination rather than a hallucination. You stand at the prow watching as the bow slices slowly through its streets of air, each wisp parting, not with resistance, but with ceremony. A strange light begins to filter through the mist, not sunlight, not moonlight, but something in between. It casts no shadow, and yet outlines every surface with impossible precision. The men's faces become masks of bone and intention. Their hands glow faintly where veins lie close to the skin. Your own reflection, glimpsed briefly in the polished surface of a brass plate, startles you. Not because it is different, but because it is recognizably not you, or perhaps not the you who boarded this ship so many weeks ago. Beneath the hull, the sea hums. It has been doing this for days now, but the pitch has changed deeper, slower, more deliberate. The rhythm feels less like water and more like breath. You've stopped describing it to the others. They hear it too. They just don't speak of it anymore. Speaking, after all, implies a need to explain. An explanation has no place in what is unfolding. Later, while inspecting the starboard rigging, a task you've done 100 times before, you find a small object tangled between two coils of line. At first glance, it looks like a knot of seaweed dried and curled. But when you touch it, it uncoils. Not like plant matter, but like a hand unclenching. Inside, you find a small disc, no larger than a coin, carved from something that feels both soft and unbreakable. bone perhaps, or something that grew beneath the sea's oldest floors. The surface bears markings, not letters, but grooves worn by repetition, by use as though the disc had passed through many hands over many centuries, each imprinting a part of their burden into its grain. You pocket it, not for safekeeping, but because it was meant for you, and you have learned at last not to deny the sea its intention. That evening, the lanterns refuse to light. It isn't a matter of oil or wick. The flame simply does not catch. The crew tries in silence, each man offering his own trick. The twist of rope dipped in rum, the whispered blessing of an old priest, the spark from flint drawn along a horseshoe nail, but nothing works. Then without warning, the lanterns light themselves, all at once. No spark, no hand, just sudden fire glowing not yellow, not orange, but blue-white, like the light beneath a glacier or the last flare of a dying star. And with the light, the singing begins again, but not from above, not from the hold, from the sails. You look up. They ripple not in the wind, but with music each fold, catching the tune and shaping it like a bell's mouth directing resonance. The ropes vibrate in sympathy. The wood groans not in protest, but in harmony. The very bones of the ship join in, and the Gray Sister becomes an instrument, a vast and ancient voice, raised not in joy, not in sorrow, but in invocation. No one sings aloud, yet all of you sing within, and you know without being told that you are nearing her, not the figure in the water, not the siren from your dreams, but her, the one whose name was lost long before language, whose eyes were carved into the first whalebone idols, whose songs were etched into the earliest storms. You dream that night, not in the way men usually dream, not flickers of memory or wishful conjuring, but a full immersion. You walk through halls made of coral and bone, where the walls pulse with veins of light. Statues line the corridor carved from salt worn by tears taller than the masts of any ship. Each one bears your face, but from different ages, different choices, different failures. At the end of the hall is a mirror, but it does not show you. It shows her, and she speaks, but not in sound, in sensation. She fills your lungs with her story. You feel her rising from the first trenches, curling around the bones of the dead, whispering to the whales, weaving storms from her breath, crafting islands from her laughter. She is not a creature. She is the sea's memory of being alive, and she has not forgotten you. When you wake, your pillow is wet, not with sweat, with seawater. You taste it and weep, because you know it came from her. The next morning, the world is different again. The sky has turned a shade. You cannot describe a hue that lives somewhere between bruise and pearl. The sea has gone silent. Not still silent. You drop a pin from your pocket. It makes no sound when it hits the deck. You speak. Your voice does not return. The world is waiting. The crew lines the deck without command. You join them. All eyes turn forward. There in the distance, rising from the ocean, not as land, not as architecture, but as a being, is the eye, the same one drawn in ink on the captain's map, but now carved in ice hundreds of feet wide. It blinks once, and the sea responds. A wave smooth and high lifts the ship, not with force, with grace. It carries you forward, into her gaze, and you do not look away, not because you are brave, but because you are hers. You have stood at the prow of ships before, through tempests that swallowed stars, through waters thick with ice floes the size of churches, through fogs so deep, even your own breath seemed a stranger to you, and never once did you feel the quiet descend like this. It is not a hush of reverence nor the pregnant pause before a storm, but something deeper, something more total. It is the silence of being watched not by men, not by beasts, but by the world itself, as though creation has tilted slightly, just enough to turn its full waiting gaze toward you. The crew stands motionless behind you, arrayed like statues along the rail. Not one speaks, not one fidgets. Not even the youngest among them dares to scratch his nose or clear his throat. You sense it in their stillness, they feel it too. Something vast looms just beyond the boundaries of sight and reason, not hidden, but withheld, as though revealing itself only as much as each man can withstand, without shattering. And before you lies the eye, not a metaphor, not an apparition born of cold or hunger, but a structure so colossal and deliberate that your mind reels in the attempt to measure it. You cannot. It stretches across the sea like a horizon unto itself. Carved from ice, yes, but not the chaotic, cracked ice of frozen oceans. This is smooth sculpted alive with veins of trapped light that pulse faintly like the slowed heartbeat of a sleeping giant. At its center, a pupil yawns a perfect circle of darkness so deep it seems not to absorb light, but to deny it entirely. Your eyes want to look away, but your soul refuses. It is a gravity, not of mass, but of memory. The ship does not halt. It glides forward, driven by no wind, no oars. The sea itself parts, curling gently around the hull, as if welcoming a long, absent pilgrim. And you realize with a clarity that strikes not the mind, but the marrow, that you are not the first to come this way. Others have stood here, not in your time perhaps, not even in your world, but others have felt this same cold awe, have heard the same hum rising from beneath the keel, like a song sung, not in notes, but in truths too heavy for language. A sound begins to form, not in your ears, but in your chest, a vibration that grows until your ribs seem to resonate with the timber of the ship. It is not painful. It is not loud. It simply is, and it brings with it images not sharp and defined, but soft and immense. A mother singing to her child in a tongue older than rivers. A whale circling a mountain that no longer exists. A door half buried in coral opening into blackness that teems not with danger, but with invitation. The captain steps forward now. His eyes are changed, no longer steely and cold, but softened not with fear, but surrender. He meets your gaze, and for the first time in many voyages, lays a hand on your shoulder. It is not a command. It is acknowledgement of what you cannot yet say. Perhaps that you are the witness now. Perhaps that he no longer is. He speaks a single word, not aloud. It enters your mind like wind slipping through a cracked window. Below, and the ship obeys. You do not understand the mechanism. No anchor is dropped, no sail raised or furled. Yet the gray sister begins to descend, not sink, not fall, but descend as if riding an unseen stairway, carved from the water itself. The sea closes above you with the softness of sleep. Light fades, but the ship remains illuminated from within each plank, exuding a pale glow, each nailhead shimmering like a memory resurfacing. And the eye draws closer. You feel the depth now, not in your lungs or ears, but in your thoughts. Your memories stretch and distort, as if pulled through a funnel. Moments from childhood resurface, some you had forgotten, others you are certain never occurred. You see your mother standing at the edge of a cliff, waving. You see yourself as a child, but with your current eyes staring up at the moon, with a question you never thought to ask. Shapes pass beyond the hull. Some resemble fish. Others seem made of fabric, or thought, or starlight. One brushes the wood with a tendril that vanishes before you can even name it. The crew does not move. They are entranced. Or perhaps they are dreaming. Perhaps they never woke from the song. The ship halts. It rests now within the eye, not at its center, but at its edge, where light and shadow touch like lovers, unsure of each other's intentions. And there she is. You don't see her arrive. She is simply present, First a figure in the water, then a shape on the deck, then a presence in your bones. She wears no crown, no robes, nothing that suggests power, and yet it radiates from her like heat from sun-warmed stone. Her skin is pale but not colorless, more like the underbelly of a cloud before rain. Her eyes hold no whites, only shifting hues of green and gray, as if the ocean itself forgot to settle on one shade. Her hair floats around her head, though there is no breeze. Her mouth does not open. But you hear her. "You have come far," she says, not in words, in certainty. You nod, not because you understand, but because anything less feels inadequate. She turns her gaze to the crew. One by one, their heads bow, not in reverence, in recognition. She steps forward, not with movement, but with presence. With each step, the ship tilts subtly, as though her weight is not measured in mass, but in truth. She reaches you. Her hand rises, and for a moment all time ceases. You are no longer aboard a ship. You are standing in a hall of mirrors, each pane reflecting a different version of you. Some are older, some younger, some marked by war, others by peace. One holds a book. One bleeds from the eyes. One walks beside her hand in hand. She touches your chest, and in that moment the mirrors shatter. You are back. She is before you. In her hand she holds a harpoon. Yours. You never told her it was. But she knows. She places it at your feet. It glows, and then fades, and in its place a seed. Small, dark, pulsing with light from within. Carry it, she says. When they ask, remember, and then she is gone. The light returns. The water parts. The ship rises, slowly, gently back toward the surface. No one speaks. No one needs to. They remember. And you are the carrier now. Not of tools or titles, but of story, of truth, of her. The sky greets you with gold. The sea is calm, but beneath the calm you feel her still, waiting, not in anger, in patience, because she knows you will speak of her, not with mouth, but with silence, and others will hear. You no longer measure the days. Whether 3 have passed since the eye, or 10, or none at all, you cannot say. And more importantly, you no longer feel the need to. Time, that old tyrant who once drove your every breath and duty, has loosened its grip. Not broken, but softened like ice beneath the first breath of thaw. And now that it slips through your fingers without urgency, you find yourself living within moments rather than marching through hours. Even the ticking rhythm of the ship, its creaks and groans, the flap of sails, the turn of wheels and winches has slowed, or perhaps simply harmonized with a larger, deeper rhythm. You can only feel, never hear. In the days, or what you assume to be days, since the Gray Sister rose from the eye-shaped chasm in the sea, the crew has fallen into a kind of quiet ritualism. No orders are given aloud, yet all tasks are completed. No meals are announced yet. No man goes hungry. The routines of ship life persist not out of discipline, but out of something gentler, a shared understanding, as though everyone now participates in a collective dream, where each action, each glance, each gesture flows, not from duty, but from deep internal gravity. And you, once just the watchman, now move among them with a different weight. They look to you not as a leader, not even as a prophet, but as one who has seen. And in that seeing, you have become something more than your own name. You do not speak of what happened in the eye. Neither do they ask. Not because they are afraid, but because they already know. Some knowledge does not require the translation of words. It is passed by proximity, through shared breath, through the brushing of shoulders on a narrow gangplank, through the hush that falls whenever the sea turns glassy and green. The memory of her still hums beneath the timbers, echoing in the hollow spaces between each man's heartbeat. Each night now, the ship travels with a smoothness that borders on the impossible. It's as though friction itself has been forgotten. No ice catches the hull. No swell disturbs the prow. The rudder no longer steers in resistance, but responds as though guessing your intent before the wheel even moves. The stars, those celestial companions that once guided your every mile, appear in unfamiliar formations, constellations, written in languages that the sky only now begins to reveal. And in these new patterns, you sometimes see faces, some familiar, others you have never known yet somehow recognize, as though you once dreamt them as a child. One morning, if that's what the pale gold light filtering through the clouds can still be called, you notice the birds have returned. But these are not the gulls and terns that usually follow a ship screeching and diving for scraps. These are silent, long-winged creatures with plumage that shimmers with pearlescent green and deep ocean blue. They do not circle. They drift, like ghosts of birds rather than birds themselves, gliding beside the masts for hours at a time before vanishing without sound or trace. The men do not speak of them, but their gazes follow the birds, and their eyes, like yours, widen in that ancient human way that precedes awe. By the third visitation, 3 birds, then 5, then 9, you begin to notice a pattern. The birds appear when the ship passes through particularly quiet stretches of sea areas where the waves roll gently, but beneath them, something seems to pulse slow and enormous. And then, always just as suddenly, they vanish. It is on the 9th such passage that something new appears, a structure on the horizon, unlike anything you have ever seen. You first glimpse it at twilight, barely a line against the silver blur of sea and sky. But as the gray sister moves steadily forward, the line thickens into a silhouette, then an outline, then a form. It is not a city, though it rises like one. Nor is it a shipwreck, though parts of it seem made of hulls and broken beams. It is a tower, but not in the way towers are built. It grows outward in spirals stacked in irregular rhythms, as though something had once planted it, and time itself had shaped it into its current form. It has no windows, no doors, no banners or flags. Yet from it emanates a low sound, constant and almost inaudible like wind, through the throat of a buried horn. The crew gathers at the rails, each man silent. The captain stands beside you now, though he says nothing. He clutches the broken compass that has not worked since the descent into the eye, and yet he turns its lid open once more, as if in ritual, not in hope. The needle spins slowly, like a leaf caught in a dying current. The ship does not slow. It drifts closer until the tower fills your vision, its base half submerged, its upper spires swaying as though drunk on wind that does not exist. A gangway, ancient and crusted with sea moss, extends from the tower toward the water, impossibly long, impossibly thin. You do not need to be told what must happen. You are already moving before your mind agrees. You step onto the gangway alone, not because the others will not follow, but because they understand this path was never meant to be shared. The wood beneath your boots groans with age, and yet holds firm. With each step, the world grows quieter, not simply because you leave the ship's noise behind, but because even your thoughts seem to still, to slow, to hush in respect. The air becomes thicker, perfumed faintly with brine, and something sweeter, like honeysuckle, blooming from a sunken garden. You reach the base of the tower. There is no door. There is no threshold. Only a shimmer in the air, like heat rising from sand, like the moment just before waking from a vivid dream. And then you are inside. You do not recall stepping through. You are simply there. The interior is not made of stone or wood or bone. It is made of memory. Not yours alone, but a latticework of remembrances layered like the rings of a tree. Someone's first voyage, someone else's last breath, a child's laughter echoing down a seaside cliff, the sob of a widow as her husband's name is carved into a votive mast. The walls are made of stories not told but felt, A spiral staircase ascends. You climb, not quickly, not with dread, with reverence. Each step seems to cost you a memory, not stolen, but exchanged. You give away the taste of your first bread, and in return, you learn how whales dream. You release the sound of your father's voice and gain the knowledge of which stars mark the graves of drowned cities. By the time you reach the upper chamber, you are lighter, not less, just clarified. She is waiting, not the figure you saw before, not the being who rose from the eye. This is another face, another mask worn by the same oceanic soul. Here she is older, less human. Her limbs are elongated, more suggestion than shape. Her eyes glow, not with light, but with remembered fire. She opens her mouth, and instead of song, a wave of silence rushes forward. You kneel, not because she asks, because your bones insist upon it. She reaches into your chest, not physically, but with a kind of permission, and draws forth the seed she placed there. It has grown. Now it is a pearl, a dark one. She holds it to the air. It pulses, and then she presses it to the wall. The pearl melts into the surface, and a door opens. You step through. You do not look back. Behind the door, a vast plain stretches before you. Not land, not sea, but something in between. Here wrecked ships float in midair. Here stars fall like snow. Here you understand everything and nothing, and it does not frighten you. You walk for a long time. You meet others. Some look like men. Some do not. Some speak. Most do not. All nod in recognition. All carry seeds. You are among them now. A watcher, a walker, a rememberer. One day, you will return to the world above, and when you do, you will tell no one, because the story is not yours to tell. It is hers, always hers. You are simply the voice, and the voice must know when to sing and when to remain silent. The moment you step back aboard the Gray Sister, the ship exhales. It's not a breath of relief, nor one of weariness, but a long, slow release of anticipation, like the final note of a song held too long, and at last allowed to fade into silence. The planks beneath your boots seem warmer than before, and when your hand finds the railing, you feel it pulse faintly beneath your fingers, like the vein in a sleeping wrist. The men still standing where you left them do not ask what you saw. They do not need to. You bring no object, no relic from the tower, and yet your eyes shine with a depth they recognize instinctively, like the look of a man who has heard thunder before the lightning appeared, and who now lives in permanent echo. No one touches you. Not out of fear or reverence, but because there is a softness around you now, an invisible veil or current that brushes against them like a tide they dare not interrupt. You pass among them as one might pass among dreamers gently, without waking them with the awareness that they are already in the presence of something more meaningful than you alone. It is not until that evening, as the sun melts into the western sea, like gold poured from the hand of a sleeping god, that the captain speaks. He says only your name, not as a summons nor a question, but as a confirmation, as if to say, you are still here, and I know you. Still breathing, still burdened, still the keeper of her memory. You nod. That is enough. The sea that follows the tower is different, not in its color or its current, but in its silence. The wind still stirs the sails, the waves still press gently against the hull, but underneath it all is a quiet so absolute it seems to extend into thought itself. The men speak only when necessary, and even then their voices are low and round, careful not to rupture the hush that now envelops them. The ship is not a vessel anymore. It has become a sanctuary, a cathedral of salt and wood. The air tastes different, richer somehow, filled with the weight of meaning like incense wafting through stained glass and stone. Each night, you return to the crow's nest, not because it is your duty, but because it is where you belong. From that height, the world makes a kind of impossible sense. You see the way the clouds form words they do not speak, the way the stars drift in patterns no chart has ever dared record. You watch the sea not for whales, not for enemy sails, but for signs. And each night, you find them a flicker of green flame along the horizon, a shadow passing beneath the surface that stirs no water, a spiral of foam that forms without cause and fades without wind. On the 5th night after the tower, you begin to hear the names, not spoken aloud, whispered in your mind. They arrive gently carried on the edge of dreams and woven into the breath of the sea. Each name is a weight, a memory, a story. Some you recognize. They belong to men who sailed beside you years ago, long vanished into storm or madness or ice. Others are unfamiliar, but feel ancient like the names of cities buried beneath waves or songs that were never written down. You repeat them silently, committing them not to paper but to the hollows behind your ribs where they settle like the pearls she gave you. The 6th night brings a change. A storm appears, not a tempest of wind and wave, but a storm of light and sound of memory and presence. It begins with the sails trembling not in wind, but in anticipation. Then a low thrum builds beneath the hull like a drumbeat played on the bones of the world. The sky splits, not with lightning, but with vision. Above, images flicker a man standing alone on a raft of bones, a city of glass beneath a frozen sea, a woman weeping salt tears that become stars. The men drop to their knees. Some weep. One sings. You do not kneel. You stand. You raise your hand toward the storm, and it listens. The storm does not break. It opens, and through it you see her once more, not in form, in memory. She walks a beach of black stone. Her footprints glow. Each step leaves behind a name. You watch as they are written not on sand, but on the tide itself. Each one sinks, not vanishing, but being kept stored somewhere deeper, somewhere sacred. She looks up, and though the distance is beyond measure, her gaze finds you. You feel her smile not on your face, but within your lungs, your spine, your blood. It is beginning, she says, not in sound, in certainty. The storm fades, the sky closes, and the sea is still once more. From that day onward, the crew begins to dream in unison. They speak of it only rarely, and even then only in hushed tones. But you listen. They speak of stairways carved into the undersides of icebergs, of libraries made of shells, and anchored to the sea floor of long corridors lined with teeth, where whispers echo backward in time. And always, always they speak of her. Some call her the siren, others call her the sea mother. One man simply calls her the voice, but all describe her the same tall, pale crowned, not with jewels, but with waves, eyes vast and unfathomable, a presence not limited by space or form. She appears differently to each of them, but always leaves behind the same feeling, that of being known, not loved, not feared, known, as though their every moment had been watched, not with judgment, but with an attention so pure and ancient, it could only be called divine. One by one the men begin to mark themselves, not intentionally, not with ink or blade, but with dreams. Peter the youngest wakes one morning with a spiral etched in salt across his chest. Jari the carpenter begins to speak in a tongue none of them recognize, but which fills the hold with a peace they cannot explain. Even the captain begins to change his hair, turning silver not from age but from knowledge, his eyes darkening into a depth that reflects stars never seen on this plane of sky. And you begin to write, not in the logbook, not on parchment, but on the air itself. With your finger, you trace symbols in the mist, and they remain glowing softly before fading. You do not know how, but you know why. The message must be sent. To whom? To those who are ready, or perhaps only to yourself. The sea begins to speak in symbols. The foam curls in shapes you can read. The clouds form sentences too old for voice. You follow, not out of curiosity, out of obligation, out of devotion. The ship begins to turn, not on command, not by design, but by calling. The rudder shifts. The wind agrees. The sails bow in compliance, and the stars above those strangers form an arrow. You follow, because that is what you do. You are no longer a watchman. You are a vessel, not of wood, of memory. And she rides within you now, not as a possession, as a purpose. And the sea, it listens, because it remembers, because it always does. By now, the journey has lost its sense of progression in the traditional, linear sense. There is no more talk of leagues traveled, no careful noting of stars, no measuring of time in the rhythm of meals, or shifts, or the slow growth of barnacles on the hull. Instead, the voyage has become cyclical, tidal ritualistic, in a way that defies charts or navigational logic. And as the ship turns toward its unseen destination, one that no map has ever acknowledged, you begin to understand that the Gray Sister does not travel through space alone, but through memory, through layers of forgotten choices, and through stories too heavy to be carried by any one soul. The sea has grown stranger still. The waters ahead no longer reflect the sky, and when you peer over the railing, you see not your face mirrored back, but shifting images, flashes of rooms you have never entered, corridors lined with lit candles that flicker at your approach, a staircase spiraling endlessly down into the depths of the ocean. In one moment, you catch sight of your younger self barefoot and drenched, whispering words to someone who wears your face in reverse. In another, you see bones piled neatly at the bottom of a reef, not decayed or scattered, but arranged deliberately as though prepared for viewing. The ship creaks in recognition. The wood beneath your feet feels alive, not in the way a well-kept vessel breathes with the tide, but in the way old stone temples hum with the weight of footsteps long since faded. You run your hand along the railing, and beneath your palm, the grain pulses once then again like a heartbeat. You lean in, unsure whether your senses have turned against you or merely tuned into something they had been ignoring all along. The captain, once a man of silent strength, has changed as well. His beard is flecked not just with salt, but with ash, as if the wind carries embers from an invisible fire. His voice has grown lower, but not from age. It has settled into a resonance, the kind of tone that you don't hear with ears, but feel in your chest. He no longer gives orders, not because he has abdicated command, but because the ship itself seems to know what to do before any word is spoken. When he walks the deck, the ropes tighten slightly, the sails shift, the tiller turns almost as though the Gray Sister recognizes him now as one of her own limbs. Below deck, the hold has become something different entirely. The barrels of salt pork remain, the hammocks still swing with the motion of the sea, and yet the walls whisper. You walk the length of the corridor one evening, your footsteps slow, deliberate, your eyes adjusting to the flickering blue light, cast not by lanterns, but by veins of bioluminescent moss now growing along the ceiling beams. When you lean close, you swear you can see shapes moving within them. Tiny fish, perhaps, or echoes of things that once had gills and now live only in light. It is in the quiet of that passage that you first hear the voices again. Not the crew's, not yours, but hers, or perhaps theirs. It's hard to tell anymore. They come not in words, but in impressions. A mother calling her child home at dusk, the first crack of ice beneath a boot on a frozen lake, the laughter of someone you loved long ago, but whose face you can no longer recall. These voices are not messages. They are reminders. They call not from without, but from within, stirring memories. You didn't know you carried memories that feel more like inheritances than experiences. You pause before the door to the ballast chamber. You haven't entered it since the day she gave you the pearl, but now it calls. You press your palm to the wood. It is warm. Inside the chamber is no longer a space of stored weight and forgotten iron. It has become a shrine, The stones have arranged themselves into a spiral how you cannot say, but each one rests at a precise angle, and in the center of the spiral sits a pool of water, dark and still unconnected to the sea, yet undeniably part of it. You kneel beside the pool. It is shallow no more than a hand's breadth deep, but when you look into it, you see depths that cannot be measured. You see her again, not as she was, but as she becomes, shifting, faceless, not because she lacks identity, but because she wears all identities at once. In her eyes swim entire histories. You see the rise of a city built from the teeth of whales, a storm that lasted 1,000 years, a man carving words into stone with his own fingernails because no other tool remained. You reach into the water, not with your hand, with your mind, and you pull something out, a fragment, a shard of memory, cold sharp real. You place it in your pocket. You do not know why, but you know you must carry it. On deck, the wind has begun to sing again. It is not music in the human sense. There are no melodies, no harmonies, no rhythms to tap with fingers or mark with feet. It is music, the way roots sing, the way ice groans, the way mountains hum, when they remember the stars they once touched. The crew begins to murmur in their sleep, names mostly, but not their own, names of people not present, names not written in the log, names that have not been spoken in centuries. You begin writing them down, in salt, on the deck. Each one evaporates within minutes, but the ship remembers. The ship always remembers. You sleep less now, not because of fear or age or unrest, but because there is too much to witness. Each night you walk the deck and the sea offers you visions. One night, you see a staircase rising from the ocean, carved of coral and bone, ascending into clouds that shimmer like mother of pearl. Another night, a whale the size of a village swims alongside the ship blind and barnacled its fluke, stirring whirlpools that gleam with stars not reflected but contained. And yet another night you see her standing at the edge of the prow, not aboard the Gray Sister, but across the sea on the deck of a ship made entirely of glass, her hands cupped around a flame that does not burn. You try to call out. Your voice leaves your mouth, but does not travel. It drifts downward into the sea. She smiles. You do not know if it is for you, but you hold it in your chest like a song you dare not hum. The men have begun carving symbols into the rails, the masts, the inside of their boots. They do not speak of why. They do not seem to remember doing it. But the symbols match the same curves, the same spirals, the same glyphs you traced in mist weeks ago. The ship, it seems, is learning a new language, or perhaps remembering an old one. One morning, you awaken to find the crow's nest empty, but not abandoned. Inside rests a sphere, black, smooth, cold. You pick it up. It speaks nothing, but your thoughts quiet, and your breath deepens. You keep it. You place it beneath your pillow. It never warms and never leaves. The journey continues, not forward, not backward, but inward, toward something waiting, toward something vast, toward something true. The deeper the Gray Sister sails into this realm, if sails is still the appropriate term, and realm an adequate word for a place that seems to live outside of time and geography, the less familiar everything becomes, and yet paradoxically, the more it all begins to feel like home. Not in the sense of comfort or nostalgia, but in the way that certain dreams settle into the bones long after waking, shaping the choices you make without ever revealing themselves fully. There is a kind of recognition now, not only in your own bones, but in the ship itself. She no longer strains against the water or resists the wind. She glides as though following an ancient instruction remembered only in the grain of her wood and the weave of her sails. It is no longer possible to determine where the sea ends and the sky begins. The horizon has melted into a gradient of color and light that defies language blues that are not blues, but memories of blues. Grays that seem to hum with stories older than stone. The clouds drift low, heavy, not with rain, but with presence. Sometimes they cast shadows that flicker like candlelight across the deck, despite no sun shining behind them. Other times they seem to reach downward fingers of mist brushing the tallest sails like a benediction. The crew, those who remain, move like monks within a cloister. Their voices are quieter than before, even in their sleep, and their faces have taken on the same weathered softness you've seen in cliffside statues of saints whose names have been worn away by centuries of wind. One man Einar has taken to sitting at the bow for hours at a time, carving long curved lines into the railing with a small piece of driftwood sharpened to a blade. You asked him once what they meant. He didn't answer with words. He simply looked at you, then looked toward the sea, and you understood the markings were not symbols to be translated, but messages left for the sea itself to read. There are fewer conversations now, but more understanding. You find that a glance exchanged between two men can say more than an hour's discussion once could. A nod carries the weight of an oath. A hand placed briefly on a shoulder can mean I see it too, or you're not alone, or even I'm ready. No one needs to explain what they're ready for. They all know it's coming. The changes to the ship are subtle, but undeniable. The ropes no longer fray. The lanterns, though untouched, never flicker. The sails, even when slack, seem to breathe. The wood on the deck, once dry and cracked in places, now feels supple beneath your feet, more like skin than timber. One morning, while making your rounds, you notice a fine network of hair-thin lines stretching across the mainmast, glowing faintly in the pre-dawn dimness. You lean closer and realize they're not cracks or signs of rot, but veins pulsing ever so faintly alive with some deep, rhythmic energy you recognize not as heartbeat, but as memory in motion. The sea below continues to change. It is no longer a surface you float upon, but a depth that watches. Sometimes in the quietest hours before dawn, you lean over the railing and feel eyes rising from below. Not eyes as you know them, but presences, pressures, attentions. You never feel threatened, only witnessed, weighed, remembered. On the 9th night after your return from the tower, the crew begins to sing. It happens without cue, without rehearsal, without any known melody or lyrics. One voice begins low humming, and then another joins, and then another, until the entire deck thrums with a chorus that seems to emerge not from their mouths, but from the space around them. You do not know the words. You don't even know if there are words. Yet the song is unmistakably familiar. It's the sound of waiting, of bearing witness, of becoming. You join them. Your voice surprises you, stronger than you remembered, fuller, filled with notes you didn't know you could reach. The sound wraps around the ship, threads through the rigging, dives into the water, and disappears into the depths, like a thread pulled by a needle through heavy fabric. The next day, the birds return, but not the silent ones from before. These are birds of impossible color, shimmering with hues that shift as they move, each feather like a fragment of glass, catching dawn light, each wingbeat a whisper. They circle the ship in elaborate spirals, never landing, never cawing, simply weaving patterns into the air as though mapping a language you are just beginning to learn. One of the older men, a cook named Baldur, begins to mimic their paths with a long piece of cord. He stands at the stern, looping the rope into the shapes they trace over and over until he has created a massive net of pattern and meaning. When he finishes, he lays the net down on the deck, folds it into thirds, and then feeds it into the sea. It vanishes without sinking. The birds do not return. That evening, a new phenomenon occurs. The moon rises threefold, not side by side, as if seen in reflection, but stacked like a column. The bottom moon is the one you know, pale, cratered, steady. The middle moon glows with a soft blue hue, its surface swirling like ink in water. The topmost moon is darker than the sky around it, not luminous at all, but present in absence that shapes the heavens by what it devours. The men kneel. Even the captain lowers his gaze. You do not. You meet the topmost moon's invisible eye and feel its pull deep in your chest. It does not command. It invites. You close your eyes, and when you open them, the moons are gone, but the invitation remains. The following days pass in a blur of ritual and revelation. Each man aboard begins to receive visions, not just dreams, but waking images layered over reality, like another sheet of skin. They see forests growing in the sails, hear whale song in the creaking of the hull, taste blood in the rain. Some begin to mark themselves not with ink or knife, but with memory. You watch as the youngest deckhand Leaf runs a single finger down his cheek during his watch. Hours later, a line of pale light glows there, faint but permanent. When asked, he says nothing, only that the sea has given him back something he didn't know he lost. And your visions grow stronger. One night you see a doorway beneath the sea, not a metaphorical one, a real door, massive, sealed in coral, and adorned with carvings that shift each time you blink. You see it not with your eyes, but in your blood. You feel its outline behind your sternum, its lock beneath your ribs. It calls to you. You don't tell the others, not because you fear their reaction, but because you understand now some callings must be answered alone. When the ship draws near an island not found on any map, no one is surprised. It rises from the sea like a breath held too long. No rocks, no trees, no buildings. Just a single flat platform of stone inscribed with a spiral that mirrors the one burned into your palm during that first descent into the eye. The ship stops, without anchors, without ropes. It simply stops. You disembark alone, not because you were told to, because no one else can. The platform hums beneath your feet, not with sound, with recognition. You kneel, not in submission, in welcome. The sea rises around you but does not wet your skin. The sky dims but does not darken. And then she comes, not in body, in presence. She fills the space around you, not as wind, not as water, but as memory made whole. She speaks, not in words, in truth. You are not here to end the story. You are here to continue it. You are not the last. You are the door. And behind you, others wait. You rise. You touch the stone. And it opens, not with hinges, with breath. Inside the sea, not around you, within you. And you step forward, willing, ready, remembered. There are no words for what exists on the other side of that stone door. At least no words that belong to any tongue still spoken by men. Not in the sailors' barked commands, nor in the whispered prayers of priests, nor even in the ancient songs hummed by mothers to their children as waves lapped against cradle walls. It is not that the place defies description, but that it erodes language as it unfolds, peeling away the names and definitions you once clung to, until all that remains is experience naked, raw, irrefutable. The moment your foot crosses the threshold, you cease to walk upon stone. You step into something thicker than air, colder than water, yet softer than mist. The space resists your presence, not with hostility, but with curiosity, as if probing you with each movement, tasting the shape of your intentions. Every step becomes a negotiation. Every breath becomes a pact. You find that your lungs must relearn how to draw in what the space offers, because it is not oxygen, not exactly, but a kind of memory in gaseous form, an atmosphere made of the dreams of drowned mariners and the regrets of lost cities. You press forward, not because there is a path, there is none, but because your body has become the compass now. You feel your direction in your blood, in the heaviness behind your eyes, in the strange rhythm that drums through your teeth. like the echo of footsteps taken long ago by someone whose name you used to answer to. Around you, the world churns gently. Shapes move, not distinct, but not formless either. You see edges hint suggestions like statues, half sculpted from smoke. Some resemble beasts you've seen in deep-water bestiaries. Others look like echoes of men tall and stooped hands, elongated not by malice, but by sorrow. And then, without any clear transition, you are standing upon a floor. It is not a floor in the traditional sense, not stone, not wood, not coral, but something that gives beneath your weight and yet supports you entirely. You look down and realize you are standing on a tapestry woven not of thread, but of light and sound. Scenes play beneath your feet, shifting as you move. You see a whaling ship caught in a storm of ink, a boy throwing a ring of iron into a bottomless pool, a woman walking alone across a glacier that weeps blood instead of meltwater. These are not visions offered to you. They are memories playing in loops that feel strangely familiar. You kneel to touch one, and the image freezes beneath your fingers. You see yourself, younger, angrier, a memory you had locked away, a choice you had justified, a man you had abandoned. You lift your hand. The tapestry resumes. You do not weep. There is no need. You are not here for penance. You are here for remembrance. The space opens into a hall. You walk forward. The walls pulse gently with life, covered in glyphs that shimmer and retreat as your gaze brushes them. The ceiling is impossibly high, lost in a mist that gleams like oil. Statues line the passageway, 12 on each side. Each is different, carved from materials that shift under your gaze: bone salt, petrified tears, ice that doesn't melt. Each statue bears a vessel, a cup, a bowl, a shell, and in each vessel, a light. Not flame, not electricity, something older, something that flickers not with brightness, but with meaning. You recognize none of the faces, and yet they feel known. At the far end of the hall stands a figure. She is not her, and yet she is part of her. A priestess, perhaps, or a conduit. She is clothed in layers of translucent fabric that ripple without breeze. Her face is obscured by a veil, but her eyes shine through silver, steady, sorrowful. She does not speak, but raises a hand palm out and waits. You approach. You mirror the gesture. Your hand meets hers and the world tilts. You are somewhere else. Not physically. Your mind is pulled forward, downward, inward. You stand on the deck of a ship not your own, beneath a sky with 2 suns and a moon that drips water. The crew is silent, their faces hollow. The sea is red. Not with blood, but with reflection. Then the scene shifts. You are in a city built in concentric rings, each ring lower than the last, spiraling into the earth. The people wear masks shaped like fish. They bow as you pass, though you do not know why. Another shift. You are in a garden. No plants, only bones, each one planted upright like a stalk of grain. They hum as wind moves between them. The vision shatters. You are back in the hall. The figure before you lowers her hand. You understand now. You have been shown the possible, not the certain. She steps aside. Behind her, a door opens. Beyond it, a stair. You descend. Each step is heavier than the last, not because of gravity, but because of memory. Your own memories, yes, but also those you carry. The voices begin to rise again, this time not whispering, singing, but not in harmony. Each voice its own song, its own language, its own pain. They do not overlap, they interlace. 1,000 lives sung simultaneously into a single breathless chord. The stair ends. You enter a chamber unlike any you've seen. It is spherical, vast. The walls pulse with moving light like schools of fish trapped beneath translucent skin. At the center, her, not as she was, as she is, formless, endless, a maelstrom of memory and silence and light. She does not move, but she surrounds. You step forward. You kneel. You offer nothing, and still she receives. The air thickens. Your chest tightens, not in pain, in fullness. And then you understand. This was never about reaching her. It was about becoming part of her. You close your eyes, and the sea rushes in, not around you, within. You are memory. You are song. You are watcher. You are watched. And in that breathless communion you realize you are home. There is no distinct moment of awakening, no sudden intake of breath, no shock of light or sound to jolt you from the depths of whatever communion has just taken place. Instead, there is only a gradual unfurling, a slow, almost imperceptible emergence, as though you are not returning from some dreamlike state, but blossoming outward from it, like a flower opening beneath the pale glow of moonlight after an endless dusk. It takes you some time, though, how much you cannot say, to realize that you are still breathing, that your body remains intact, and that your consciousness is still tethered, however loosely, to flesh and bone. You are lying on your back. The surface beneath you is no longer stone, nor the soft, living tapestry you walked upon within the temple, but polished wood, familiar wood, salt-worn, weather-beaten, smelling faintly of oil and rope and the long, slow rot that clings to all ships that have outlived the men who built them. You open your eyes and see the sails above you, tattered but full breathing, in and out with the rhythm of a wind that is not entirely wind. Above that, the sky a dome of indigo streaked with threads of silver and copper, as though someone had scraped a brush across wet canvas and let the strokes dry in place. You are back aboard the Gray Sister, but the Gray Sister is not as you left her. Everything is as it should be, and yet everything is different. The deck creaks, but the sound is harmonious now, like the bending of a cello string, drawn beneath fingers that understand pain and beauty equally. The masts lean ever so slightly inward, as if the ship herself has taken to bowing. The rigging hums, the wood breathes, and the hull, oh the hull, it pulses beneath you with a gentle maternal cadence, as if the ship has become not just a vessel, but a body, and you reborn within it. The crew is gathered. They do not speak. They do not need to. They stand in a loose circle around you, faces illuminated by the new light that seems to emanate not from above, but from within. Some of them look the same. Others are changed in ways that have nothing to do with age or wear. Their eyes shine differently. Their skin carries the memory of salt in a way that no ocean could ever teach. You look at them and see not men but vessels, each one carrying something, an image, a sound, a name, a fragment of her. And they too recognize you. The captain steps forward. His hair, now fully white, frames a face that looks like it was carved from driftwood and longing. He no longer wears the coat he once held so dear, the one with gold-threaded cuffs and brass buttons polished daily despite the salt, but instead wears something that resembles it only in memory. A robe of woven sailcloth bleached by mist and sewn with thread that glimmers when it catches the breath of song. He kneels beside you. He does not ask what you saw. Instead, he offers you a bowl. It is not filled with water, not wine, not anything you can name, but it glows faintly, and when you look into it, you see faces, not yours, not the crew's, but others. Children born beneath eclipses, elders who died whispering into tide pools, a man standing on a cliff, listening to thunder that has not yet arrived. You take the bowl, you drink. The taste is overwhelming, not because it is strong, but because it is infinite. Each drop is a story, each swallow a surrender. When you finish, the captain places a hand on your chest and says one word, ready. And somehow you are. The ship begins to move again. No one raises the sails. No one touches the wheel. It simply moves as though the sea has remembered the promise you made to her and now intends to guide you to where that promise must be fulfilled. Days pass, or moments. The sun rises and sets in colors you do not have names for. The moon appears in different phases across different nights, and sometimes in 3s or 5s. You pass through waters so still they reflect your dreams, and through storms so silent you wonder if the thunder has been buried beneath centuries of silence. Fish with translucent skin swim in schools shaped like words. Whales follow in your wake, singing songs with pauses where your name once was. The ship crests a wave one morning and stops, not abruptly, gently, as though it has arrived not at land, but at understanding. Before you lies no island, no port, only a field of light. It stretches across the sea in all directions, undulating like the northern lights trapped beneath the surface of the water. The ship hesitates. So do you. But only for a breath. You descend, not into the sea, into the light. You do not sink. You are carried, as if by 1,000 hands. They do not touch, but they guide. Below a city, it is not Atlantis nor anything from the stories of drunken old mariners and ambitious cartographers. It is older, vast, built not of stone or coral or bone, but of memory given form. The buildings are shaped like thoughts. The roads are lined with song. You pass beneath arches that resonate with your name and walk over bridges that remember your childhood laughter. She waits at the center, not standing, not seated, simply present. You approach. You do not bow. She does not rise. The sea stills. The city breathes. And then she speaks, not in words, in truth. You are the last to forget, and the first to remember. You open your hands. They are empty, but she sees the weight they carry. You open your mouth, and a name escapes. Not yours, hers. The first name, the one carved into the bones of the world. She smiles, and the city dissolves. Not vanishes, dissolves, like mist retreating from the touch of morning. You find yourself standing on the deck of the Gray Sister once more. The crew is gone, not dead, elsewhere. You are alone, but not lonely, because she is with you now, in every breath, in every wave, in every silence. You turn the ship. You do not know where you are going, but the sea does, and she will guide you, because you are hers, and she is memory, and now, so are you. The journey, if it can still be called, that no longer adheres to any frame of movement you have ever known. The Gray Sister does not sail now in the traditional sense. There is no wind to press her forward, no tide to rock her gently along the old familiar paths of the trade routes, no reference points of star or compass or horizon. What carries her instead is something far older than wind, far deeper than current. It is not speed or direction that drives her onward, but purpose. A kind of silent intent, one that speaks not in commands or maps, but in the stillness between each breath. You take in the subtle way the world seems to tilt, ever so slightly beneath your feet, as if the ocean itself is leaning and listening. The world around the ship has become something other. It is not sea, not sky, not storm. It is a liminal space, a threshold, a veil stretched thin between what was and what waits. You stand at the prow daily now, not out of duty, nor to observe anything specific, but because your presence there feels required, not by the crew, which no longer exists in the form it once did, but by the sea, and perhaps by her. You lean into the windless air and feel it respond, not with chill or warmth, but with acknowledgement. Each hour brings with it a new shape of light. Sometimes the sky overhead warps into patterns of glassy, shifting color that twist like oil upon water, sometimes rippling with sounds that resemble music, though there are no instruments playing. Other times, the light collapses into a low, smoldering twilight, bathing the deck in hues of bronze and ink, and during those hours, the ship seems to pause entirely, as though the world is holding its breath. You think often of the crew, not just their faces, but their voices, their routines, the lives they carried with them before they stepped into this uncharted story. Though they are not with you in body, you feel them still. in the knots tied expertly in the rigging, in the wear of the railing where Einar always leaned during his morning watch, in the faint echo of a chuckle beneath the deck, a ghost of sound left behind by someone who once told stories in the galley, stories no longer spoken aloud. You do not mourn them, not in the way people mourn those lost to drowning or battle or time. You know better now. They are not lost. They have merely gone deeper. And in some way, you cannot yet articulate, you know you will follow. There are new signs now, marks appearing on the wood on your hands, even in the air. You first noticed them in the water one morning looking over the starboard rail, just as the light shifted beneath the surface. What you saw was not reflection, but writing script, coiled in spirals, glowing faintly in the currents. The words shimmered in and out of legibility, not because the water obscured them, but because your mind struggled to keep pace with what they meant. You recognized shapes. Some echoed the sigils carved into the hull during the early voyage. Others resembled the glyphs that glowed in the temple hall. But more than that, you recognized the feeling, the sense of being addressed. That was the first time you truly realized the sea had not merely been watching, it had been speaking. And you, through her grace, through your transformation, had finally begun to understand. You no longer dream as you once did. Sleep has become a kind of ceremony, a descent into memory that is not always your own. Sometimes you close your eyes and find yourself walking paths, long, sunken, cobbled roads in a drowned city where statues stare down from archways with eyes carved to resemble waves. Other times you drift through the minds of creatures older than men, whales singing beneath continents' coral, growing in the shape of ancient prayers, squid, whose bioluminescence pulses to the rhythm of starfire. You do not resist these dreams. You welcome them. Each one brings you closer. Each one strips away something you no longer need. Your body, too, has begun to change. The signs are subtle, but unmistakable. Your hair, once streaked with salt white and wind-thinned, now grows longer, darker, though it gleams faintly even in shadow. Your skin has become more sensitive to temperature, so much so that you can feel the intentions of the wind, the moods of the mist. The scars you carried for decades have faded, not disappeared, but softened, like stories retold so many times. They have become myth. And your eyes see things no man was ever meant to see. Shapes that move behind stars, currents in the air that spiral like kelp, voices that leave no mouths but sing nonetheless. One morning, just before what passes for dawn in this place, you find a new object at the center of the deck. It is not there the night before. No one placed it. And yet, it has clearly been waiting. It is a bowl, much like the one you drank from when the captain welcomed you back to the ship after your descent into the tower. But this one is etched with lines that seem to move of their own accord. As you draw nearer, the lines shift, revealing not images but sequences. Waves, then stars, then eyes, then hands. You kneel, you reach out. The bowl is filled with water, or something like it. You look in and do not see your reflection. You see a sky cracking open like an egg. You see a fleet of ships made of bone and silence. You see a boy holding a pearl the size of his heart. You see yourself, older, glowing, vanishing. You reach in, your fingers touch the water, and the world opens. Not wide, but deep. You fall inward, downward, through light and color and shape. You land softly on a shore you do not remember, yet know intimately. You are standing on the edge of a sea that is not the sea. The sand beneath your feet is made of stars. The wind sings names that have never been spoken. And across the water she waits. She is not form, not voice. She is idea. She is presence. She is totality. And you walk toward her, across the water. It holds you not because you are light, but because you are known. She meets you in the middle. There are no words, no gestures, only merging. Your breath becomes hers, her thought becomes yours. The sea around you rises not in waves but in stories. Each drop contains a name, each ripple contains a memory. She shows you everything. The beginning, the first call from below, the shaping of the deep, the pact between flesh and tide, the rebellion of air, the birth of music from silence, the grief of the ocean for those who forgot, and the promise made long ago that when the last of the watchers returned, the song would begin again. You are the last and the first. You are not the end. You are the echo, the memory made flesh. She withdraws. You do not. You remain with her, not in body, in resonance. The ship is empty. The sea is calm, and far above a single star pulses once, twice, and fades. You are not gone. You are not lost. You are remembered. And she sings, because now she has found her voice again, and it is yours. And now, the sea grows still. The last tide withdraws its breath. You remain adrift, not on the ship's deck, nor in any harbor of this world, but somewhere deeper, somewhere quieter, where memory softens into mist and truth no longer needs a name. The gray sister has sailed far beyond the maps, beyond even the questions that once held weight. The compass rests, not because it is broken, but because there is nowhere left it needs to point. You no longer watch the sea. You are the sea, not in form, nor in name, but in the way silence belongs to the sky after thunder has passed. You carry echoes now of voices, lost, of songs remembered, of doors opened and never fully closed again. And though you walk among others, they will not quite meet your eyes. Not because they fear you, but because somehow they'll know you have seen something that cannot be explained. Something older than myth, quieter than prayer, vaster than death. Let them wonder. Let the waves whisper your story where no pen has ever reached. And if one night while standing at some distant shore they hear the creak of an invisible mast, or glimpse a single lantern swaying where no ship should be, then they will understand. Some journeys don't end, they only descend. So rest now, old watcher. Let the sea hold you. Let her sing as only she can. The story is done. But the memory drifts on. Sleep gently, sleep deeply, sleep whole.